You're watching Morning at NTV.
A very good morning once again, and many thanks for staying with us right here on the #1 breakfast show in the country, Africa and the world, Morning at NTV. My name is Rami Bisiku, and of course during the break I just got off the phone with the Lord Mayor of Kampala, Arias Lukwago. He's telling me he's braving traffic, but he's making his way to the studio to talk about the issue of the continued school fires that are ravaging our country. So far, 10 school fires and counting have been registered within our jurisdiction since the pandemic. Since January of 2022. Yes, and in 2018 alone. You remember that situation between April and June over, yes, that was around, 2008, around April and June, over 33 fires, yes, in 29 schools were actually registered in our country. So what causes these fires? What do they continue happening? According to the Lord Mayor, he says it could be an arsonist attack. He was actually alluding to the fire that gutted Bilal Islamic primary and secondary school that is overnight on Sunday. You know, when we came over here for the morning show on Monday morning, that was the somber news coming in from Boise as a result of that fire that gutted that jurisdiction. So why do these issues continue happening within our schools? The Lord Mayor shall be interesting us with a few facts on that issue. And if we are really lucky, we are also trying to reach out to the CID spokesperson, that is Mr. Charles Twine. He might also be around for that encounter with the Lord Mayor. But for now, I do have two very, very intelligent individuals, that is Miss Brenda Otika of Star Uganda Education, and Miss Hilda Namutosi, the head teacher of Wairaka College in Jinja, and we'd like to talk about how best we can transform our teachers. Ministry of Education and Sports, in partnership with Star Education, with financial support from the Mastercard Foundation, well, it has been implementing the Building a Teacher Changemaker movement to address Uganda's learning crisis within our secondary schools, and this has been going on since January of 2015. Now, the sad news is that this program actually ended yesterday, February 28th. We are now talking about March 1st, 2022. So what has been achieved during the last 7 years? That's why we are here to talk about this program. Well, it came before the pandemic. During the pandemic, it was still around. What kind of challenges did they grapple with during that pandemic period? How did they circumvent those challenges? How are teachers faring right now? The school system. Let's talk about education. Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Someone tell me about this program, January 2015. What is it about and what was the end goal for this big program? Let me start with you, Ms. Namutosi.
Thank you very much. The program started in 2015, funded basically by Mastercard Foundation. Right. But the people in the driving seat are the staff of STAR program, which is the School and Teachers Innovating for Results.
Indeed.
So since I am not a staff member of STAR,
but you can tell us how it has been happening within.
I have benefited from it because we were the target group, the schools, the teachers, the administrators, to try, I think in their observation, they noted, and which is quite true, that there was a decline in the attitude of teachers towards what we do, and that is why they pushed it to reigniting what we already had. We had the interest, we had the professionalism, but it needed reigniting because it had kind of slackened. Like I'm sure when you were at school, you had student teachers and you knew the life of a student teacher.
Indeed.
Very vibrant. Yeah. But eventually when we get into the system, we kind of cool down. So they reignited that heat, and that is what we benefited. And
of course, this is Ms. Hilda Namutosi. She is the head teacher of Wairaka College that is in Jinja, one of the beneficiaries of this 7-year program that kickstarted in 2015 January. We do have a staff member from Star Education, and that is Miss Brenda Otika. Thank you for joining us right here on Morning at NTV. This program birthed 7 years ago. What was the end goal?
The end goal of the program was basically to have a teacher who is motivated, a teacher who has the learner at the center of it all, a teacher who supports the learner to develop the love for lifelong learning.
Indeed.
So Star Education basically is an international NGO that supports education systems to reignite intrinsic motivation among teachers, officials, and learners so that they can learn and improve. And we do this through networks.
What kind of networks?
We have peer networks at different levels. At the end of it all, STAG Education, through this funding from MasterCard Foundation, has created networks of officials at all levels of the system. At the district level, we have officials come together, the district education officers, the inspectors of schools, and it provides them with a platform to reflect on the challenges they're experiencing in their schools, and together come up with strategies on how they can address this. So we have the network for officials. We also have the network of head teachers, which meet twice in a school term. At the beginning of the term, they come together to reflect on the previous term, celebrate the successes and the achievements, highlight challenges, and together come up with strategies to improve. And then at the school level, we also have the teacher networks, which is basically facilitated by the head teacher. And the head teacher gives teachers the opportunity to discuss evidence-based strategies, which are co-created with the Ministry of Education and Sports, and then they identify how best they can adapt these strategies to their classroom, brainstorm on potential challenges to implementation, and together come up with strategies on how best they can go back and incorporate them in their lessons. All
right, whenever you could converge in a room and speak to these teachers, what are some of the challenges they will talk about on a daily basis, making it hard for them to do their work?
One of the challenges that teachers have always highlighted is around the class sizes.
All right.
The class sizes are so huge, and yet for the learner to be prioritized, to be put at the center, the learners have to be given the opportunity to engage directly in the learning processes. So we find that for strategies that are recommended based on evidence as being so effective, the number of size, the class size will limit the interaction or engagement of the teachers. The other one is around the syllabus. Teachers observe that there is a lot that they need to deliver to the learners. However, when we look at the process of engaging the student in the actual learning process, then there is opportunity for the children to practice, to reflect, to share their experiences, and yet at the end of it all, a teacher feels that this will limit them from completing the syllabus that is in place. So those are some of the reasons or challenges that they bring up.
So they have trouble deciphering the syllabus to the students?
They feel that these practices require a lot of time to embed them in the lesson, but also to help the learners gain mastery when it comes to the classroom.
What do you make of this, Ms. Namutosi?
Well, like she has mentioned, the teacher-learner ratios sometimes are too big that reaching out to individual learners becomes a challenge. But also the curriculum is quite bulky, and usually what a teacher wants is to go through the syllabus quite fast and then get back.
To revise.
Which they felt that it may not help us to run through and then come back. Probably we could have some innovations coming along.
Leads to cram work.
Yeah, exactly. To keep I think intervening some interventions as the learners are not picking the content that they would want to learn, so that along the way, every learner is taken care of. If it requires remedial, then let it be done along the way than rushing through and coming back. But now we always have, as a head teacher, we always have assessments. How far have you gone with syllabus coverage? And eventually it puts pressure on the teacher to try and cover the syllabus within the set periods. And in so doing, you may be covering the syllabus, but you are not uncovering the content for the learners to pick what is required. So the innovations that the teachers started doing in the process of making network meetings and setting strategies, those innovations, we usually refer to them as micro innovations, because it might be a small innovation which can help that lesson, but it may not be carried to the next lesson. That helps the learners to learn more and learn better. But it requires a lot of preparation on the side of the teachers. And because of the bulky syllabus, sometimes the teachers think that the time may not be enough with all these other things, components put into what we are supposed to do.
And how has this 7-year program been able to help with your problem at Wairaka College?
Well, the issue is sometimes it is not about how much coverage you have done, but it is about how well the learner has mastered what you have given them.
As you take them through the journey.
As you take them through the content. Because like one time somebody said from, I think somebody mentioned it in one of the moments when they were trying to recap on UNEB performances, and they said if these learners have learned this content very well, if a learner has 75% of the content mastered, then this learner is going to excel. So sometimes it's not really about how much you have covered, but how well you have covered what you have covered. So for us, we are looking at covering the syllabus, yes, but we are also looking at how much this learner has learned. So that it is usually the intrinsic motivation that really counts on the part of the teacher. If this teacher has the intrinsic motivation, the teacher will go a long way in making sure the lesson is prepared. Will make sure the learners have learned what they have learned, and even go along an extra mile in creating these other moments when he can get back to a few learners who could have had a challenge, because sometimes not everybody has a challenge. And when you keep giving remedios to everyone, the good students get bored and may eventually start
instead
avoiding.
of researching further.
Exactly.
Indeed, don't get
so
bored.
you may have to separate these ones who may not have got the content, so that you help them to pick the content, and then eventually in the next lesson, they're all moving together. But there are also certain things that the teachers keep doing, because I'm sure you can recall your lessons while you are a student.
Indeed.
And when a teacher comes in and I ask a question, and you may not put up your hand even when you know the answers.
Indeed.
So it is good for us not to look at only those who know the answers by putting up their hands, but let's pick everybody, give everybody a chance to say what they have to say. But at the same time, it's the mindset of the teacher and the learner. So once you have made these learners know that even when I make a mistake, I will learn from it, they will always tell you what they have. So it is emphasizing that mistakes are part of the learning process. Let them make mistakes, learn from them, so that when you ask a question, they'll put up their hand, say the response, even when it is not right. How the teacher responds to the wrong answer is what counts.
Issues to do with the higher learner-teacher ratio, issues to do with the curriculum, being hurried by the teachers. Many of the learners are being left behind. What is the education stir doing? What have you been doing about this to ensure that you alleviate the challenge?
Basically, what we've been doing is more around encouraging teachers to come up with innovative ideas on how best they can address some of those challenges. We throw it back to them, and teachers are able to brainstorm and come up with actually best or effective strategies.
You just give them a platform to talk about the issues, and then recommendations are birthed, and then they go back and expedite.
And there are recommendations or issues that can be addressed at the school level. There are others that need engagement at different levels. So at the end of every term, there is opportunity at the district level to reflect on the progress of the program, to identify what are the gaps. And then as a district, this meeting is chaired by the district education officer, they are able to identify what is it that they can do to address some of those gaps. And then at the national level, we also have a review meeting that happens termly, where some of the critical issues from the district are actually presented and discussed at the national level.
And of course, this program was birthed in January of 2015, meaning before the pandemic. During the pandemic, it was largely still active. So the challenges that befell this program before the pandemic are largely different from those during the COVID-19 pandemic. Please bring us up to speed with some of those problems that dogged the ability of this program to become a full-time success.
So before the pandemic, we were having these meetings happen in person, being led by the head teacher and another teacher that they identified to support in driving or facilitating the discussions at the school level. However, with the pandemic, then came the school closures. Teachers were home and children were also home, but we still recognize that there was the need for teachers to be kept engaged. There was need for teachers to stay motivated. So what happened was, in consultation with the Ministry of Education and Sports, we then got into a blended approach of program delivery. We brought on board continuous professional development sessions that were being run over the radio through bi-weekly radio CPDs. And these CPDs were being delivered by the officials. We had head teachers and teacher representatives being part of it. So they would discuss issues that teachers were experiencing as a result of the school closures. For instance, we had topics on psychosocial support. We had topics on how to build the relationship between the teachers and the learners when schools reopened. We had aspects to do with mindset. How do teachers develop a growth mindset, and how does this trickle down to the learner? So through those CPDs, teachers had the opportunity to share their reflections by calling on the different radio stations, and also coming up with a plan on how they would apply this learning when schools reopened. And to make the program effective, there were also a series of follow-up calls or support from the district officials, but also from the STAR program team to find out what they have to say about the content, how is it helping them, where do they see gaps, and what needs to be done. And also to co-create the topics for discussion. This was done in a collaborative way. We consulted stakeholders, we consulted ministry officials, and then we co-created this content.
But during the COVID-19 pandemic, Ms. Namutosi, many of our teachers were demotivated. Many even thought about, you know what, let me just leave this profession. I'm not making any money, 2 years and counting. Why am I still a teacher? So many decided to do some other menial jobs because they were demotivated. In your own perspective, share with us your idea of a motivated teacher in the achievement of learning outcomes and 21st century skilling. Is that even achievable right now?
I believe it is. Gradually it is.
Indeed.
But the motivation that was low during the pandemic, I think I wouldn't say that it could have cut across because as you're well aware, the ministry still continued sustaining those that it has always sustained. But also, I think it also gave an opportunity for the teachers to know that there's life outside the classroom. And therefore they had to get some other skills that they needed, some life skills. But yes, motivation of a teacher is for you to love what you do without attaching it all the time on monetary benefits. So that once you have gone into the profession of teaching, love what you do, love what you feel the learners benefit out of what you are doing, and prepare, do everything that is required of you as a teacher to make sure that the learner is benefiting. Because as you mentioned, the 21st century, the learner is at the center of the learning. So the learner has to participate actively. It's the teacher should now become a facilitator in the 21st century and let the learner take lead in the learning process.
Looking back, Ms. Namutosi, would like to know what are the lessons on what actually works and doesn't work in actually bringing out very good educational outcomes?
What doesn't work is
what works
always,
and doesn't work.
What doesn't work is always thinking that the learner doesn't know anything. Because these learners are informed, these learners have ideas, but it is us to tap those ideas and expound on them. But also what works is when we do our part, let us research, let us renew what we have, let us continue with professional development so that we keep abreast with the new skills, new knowledge, new technologies to help us improve on the teaching learning progress. I think that is going to work for us. Like now, maybe the way the lower secondary curriculum has come in, it challenges a teacher to always keep updated with new skills and new knowledge to help facilitate the learner.
Let me also talk to Brenda Akita. Would you recommend this program for its renewal if you are in a position of power?
Yes, I would.
And what would you say to the schools that missed out before I let you all go?
To the schools that missed out, the message that I pass on is the learner being at the center of learning, but also the most important thing is for the teacher. The teacher needs to develop the love for what they do and be able to also support the child or the learner to fall back in love with learning. If a teacher is motivated, then the learner will be motivated and will be keen to come back to come to school, will be engaged in the entire learning process. The teacher will also be challenged to create that enabling environment that challenges the learner to get the best out of themselves.
I'm telling you, you'll always get the best in education if you have a motivated teacher. That person will be smiling left, right when they enter the class, and you'll be able to actually follow all the proceedings in their entirety. But some teachers are not motivated. They'll enter a class gloomy as they came in, just tell you to copy the notes, and they'll step out. Then next time they'll just, take you through the notes like she was saying. They take you through quicker through the curriculum, and then later on they revise, which is a wrong model of teaching in that regard. You need to be moving step by step with the learners. Thank you very much, Ms. Hilda, Namutosi, and also Otika for coming through. Very, very honored to have you too.
Thank you so much for having us.
And indeed, in our midst, yes, in the other side of the studio, the Lord Mayor is already here. Edias Lukwago is going to be joining us to talk about the rampant school fires. What do they keep happening? Is it a case of arson? Well, we'll be right back. Thank you, ladies, for coming.